is 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Launch Sequence Podcast, episode 97. I'm your host, Space Tomato, and today we've got an interesting topic. Usually we're talking about stuff that's happening pretty in your face around Star Citizen or, a couple other games every once in a while, but today we're looking at something that's a little more obscure. The way that Star Citizen has worked in the past has been very much based on the updates and the things included in the code when those updates come out. And we've seen services like item finders come out based on that data, and people rely on those item finders for important things. But today I have with me the creator of one of those item finders, in my opinion, one of the best out there, to talk about a pretty big change happening in the 318 branch that may point towards pretty seismic changes in gameplay in the future. Meepowski, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Hello, thank you. I'm doing good, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Meepowski is we met quite a while ago, and since we met, you've always been kind of involved in sort of the exploration and data science side of Star Citizen as much as there has been so far. Is that always what you're going to focus on?
Yeah, I think my primary focus is exploration and science and stuff like that. And like you probably know, I run the org called Cornerstone. It's an org run by a council of 7 keystones, and we are a primarily exploration focused org, so that's mainly what we deal with. But it's not our only purpose. We have internal pillars or divisions, would probably be more descriptive name for every single aspect of the game, of the gameplay. Like, we deal with combat, we deal with logistics, technical, science stuff, and we plan on being a self-sustaining entity. But of course, exploration is still our main goal and purpose.
Okay, yeah. And then the way they're doing the gameplay seems to ensure that even if you're focused on one thing, you're going to want people who know how to do everything around you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in and talking about this topic. I think this is one of those things that's really going to skate by the majority of folks, at least for now, not being noticed. I mean, I wouldn't have noticed it if I wasn't kind of involved in these circles in some way. And I hope that this is something that leads to bigger changes in the future, but we'll talk through that for the rest of this show. Before we start, I would like to say, folks, if you're watching this in video format, then you may notice I don't have a camera today. We just made a big trip from Turkey over to the US, and we'll be here for the next week and a half or so. So things are going to be a little weird in terms of scheduling and in terms of availability of camera. It's not easy to set these things up immediately. So sit back. Don't worry about me. I'm a tomato for the day. And, just close your eyes and listen, I guess. So, Meep. Can I call you Meep?
Yeah, sure. Cool. That's what most of the people call me.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. It's a good one. First, before we dive into things, exploration and data running are... Well, let's say, okay, first, exploration is probably one of the more anticipated types of gameplay in this game, but also one of the ones that people rarely ever talk about because it's just so hard to nail down what it's going to be. And then data running, I feel like, is something that's very unique to Star Citizen. There's not many games I know of that makes data a commodity or something that's tradable. What drew you to Star Citizen, though, and to this part of the gameplay specifically?
So I've heard about Star Citizen from Scott Manley long time ago because I was watching his Kerbal space program videos on YouTube, and I discovered the game through him. And I don't know, the game just pulled me in, and the more I play, the more fascinated with it I get. And I focus on exploration because the game is just so pretty that I could spend hours just flying around and admiring the views, which are often breathtaking. Like, when I'm in the right mood, I can sometimes just start up the game and fly along the surface of the planet and just look around because the views are very cool. And in the future, I'm pretty sure as the game develops, it will get even prettier and prettier, and the views are gonna be even more breathtaking. So that's always something that pulls me in. And just the exploration gameplay, I think it's interesting being like the first to find something, the first to gather the data and be able to share the data with others. Mapping places is interesting. I remember CIG talked about, I think it was called deep space probing or something like that. Yeah, we were supposed to get like the ability to ping with a special ping and find things that are out there in the middle of nowhere and discover them and gather information about those things. It's gonna be very cool one day.
So when you look at exploration or think about exploration, what do you feel like it's going to be in Star Citizen specifically?
I think it's gonna be mostly finding places that haven't been mapped yet, or like discovering the new jump points that show up dynamically and mapping them, finding locations of like resource veins for mining and sending that information, a lot of things like that. And of course using this deep probe system to find anomalies and stuff in space and map them and document them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the resources stuff. I do worry that folks look forward to the possibility of finding jump points and might be disappointed to realize how few of them there are compared to how many players there are.
Yeah, but I think there were mentions of some of the jump points showing up dynamically in places and then disappearing again, and yeah, so that will be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they figure that, because it sounds great in theory, and then I think about how you make that work in game and how you...
Yeah, if there's 100,000 player looking for a jump point in the same system, it's gonna get found pretty quickly. But
yeah. So
a lot will depend on how long the jump point is open and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So have you guys, and I like to pick people's brains about the specific type of gameplay before we get into things. Have you guys in your own org talked or theorized how it's going to work when you're out there doing exploration? You find a resource deposit and you have to get somebody to run that data back to a central hub. Have you gone into detail about what you hope to do in that situation?
Not really. I'm not the biggest fan of theory crafting when it comes to the future of Star Citizen. I like to stick to what we know. And I know, but I like to stick to what CIG tells us because I'd rather not get disappointed by just letting my imagination go wild.
Sure.
Yes. It will be very closely tied with the data running gameplay, and how that develops, we'll see. But it will definitely be something to look forward to.
Well, let's step back and look at what's already in the game then. Jumping a little bit ahead of our conversation here, but when you look at all of the things you can do exploration-wise in the game right now, do you feel like it is headed in a good direction? Have you noticed a change in exploration possibilities over the last 2 years?
So currently the exploration gameplay is kind of dead because of the data mining, and there's no way to find something that somebody haven't found yet, because the moment that the thing is put into the game files, you can data mine it and find it. So any cave, any wreck, anything, as soon as the files touch Evocati, it's known.
And it's always kind of been what's made people think exploration is going to work, right?
But the thing is, I dug through the files many times, and I believe the files are set up in such a way that in the future they can switch to a mode in which we will be able to data mine that something exists, but not where it exists. And the information about what's where will only get streamed when you get close to that location. So, for example, you could find out that this rock exists somewhere, but not where it exists.
So somebody could see how many, say, artifacts are in a star system. They just
probably not even how many, just what artifact exists. Like this, let's take a trash can that you can find on Area 18. You would know that this trash can exists, but you wouldn't know where it stands and how many of them are there at Area 18.
And what is this based off of? Just from what you've seen?
From what I've seen in the game files, I believe they could set it like that, yes.
And that kind of leads us towards the big change, really, that's on this episode, that there is something going on in the game files that has to do with these objects. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found?
So far, this doesn't affect exploration directly, but so far up till now, in the game files, we had lists of what items are sold where and what are their prices, or like base prices, when the server starts fresh, because the prices of some of the items at the moment can vary depending on how many people buy and sell. And the same goes for trading resources and stuff like that. And up till now, all of this was in the game files, so we could easily scrape it and we'd know, hey, you can buy Laranite here and sell it here for this much, or you can buy this weapon here for this much and this armor set there. But with the 3.18.1 update, all of this data is gone and it's server side now, so we do not have a way to data mine this. And which leads to some pretty interesting things.
Right, because that is, as you said, that's the biggest thing that's really stood in the way of exploration, because there are locations to find, there are things get added to the game, and there's value placed on those things, but because you could always just dip into the files and find the coordinates, there was never much challenge or gameplay surrounding it.
You can still find pretty locations. There are many like that, but yeah.
Okay. So, what kind of possibilities then is this giving you ideas for?
For me, I think so. When you think about it, because the lists were tied to the game files, to change the availability of some items, they probably needed to push out a patch. And now that it's all server-side, they can adjust that more dynamically. Not only the prices, I believe they could adjust the prices and stuff like that in the past, but right now they will be able to adjust even what items are available where at will. So they could tie that quanta later down the line, but for now they probably can just see that people are buying certain items there too much or something, and they run some data collection and see, oh, this route is not inefficient, you can adjust it and change the amount of resources or items there, change their prices dynamically and see how people react.
So if that's the case, then, because we've had journal entries that come in and kind of let you know that prices have changed around the system, how were they doing that before?
So, like I said, I believe they were able to adjust the prices, but not like availability. You could always buy something, but at different prices. And now they can remove an item completely, I assume. So you can imagine. One of the things that comes to my mind is, for example, they tend to add subscriber items to the game a few months in advance, so they have them ready for the next subscriber flare time they give them away. And if they were to do a shop in game for subscriber items, they would not be able to hide those items that are coming later on as a surprise to subscribers from the shop. and now they could, I think. So imagine that they push out a patch with like 3 sets of subscriber items that are in the game files, and they have a kiosk for subscriber items in games, and only what, or they could even maybe tie it into like per account, so that the game detects that, hey, this person opened the kiosk and has access to those subscriber items, so only show them the subscriber items they have access to. That would be interesting, and that would solve a problem that people have with the new repair tool, that it doesn't give you back the subscriber items and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's been a ongoing worry or thing that people have wanted to see a solution for, and that was one of the popular solutions people came up with. Just have a store, like you can permanently lose your subscriber item, but you should also be able to just buy it back free of charge or small amount of charge or something. I like that.
Yeah, and I think that change would let them do a store that shows you only what you are supposed to be able to buy, for example, which is interesting.
So do you feel like is this something that you think is related to PES and that's why it's happening in 3.18.1, or do you think it could just be related to something else they're preparing for?
So because it didn't happen with 3.18 right away, it only happened with 3.18.1. I thought it might be something related to optimizations they are trying to put in to prevent rocky launches like 3.18.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure. I don't know if that would help with optimizing anything. But it might be something that just PES let happen. Like, they were working on some systems in the background and waiting for PES to happen to see how that runs, and then they could implement them. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll soon see some adjustments to trading and stuff. I hope the new Mobiglass, when we finally get an update, will have something like Item Finder built in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be really nice. Go ahead.
I've been always building Item Finder with the assumption that it will die one day, because it's not thing that you will be able to keep up with at some point in the future. And I really hope that it will die because there's a better way to do it in game.
Well, so this is, I made a video about this about a year ago for supporters, and I just released it this weekend publicly, and I think it fits with this idea. People like yourself have done a lot to kind of help fill in these gaps that the game didn't before. And now you're saying directly that, like, this is something that you've put the time and work into that you don't necessarily expect to continue after an in-game version. So you don't think that there is a place that your version lives alongside what might be available in-game?
So there are 2 versions of the future possible. One is that it could live if they see, because right now there is hundreds or tens of thousands of entries in my database for what's sold where. If it's all dynamic and if it's all working as they plan to make it work. So in the future, the plan is, I believe, that, for example, somebody goes to mine some resources, then goes to a refinery and refines them, and sells them to some factory. That factory produces some items, then a cargo person comes over and grabs those and sells to some station or something. And based on that, the availability of the items in stores is set, right? So it's a pretty convoluted route to get some items show up in the store. And if it's as dynamic as that, then keeping track of tens of thousands of entries in just one system is not feasible to do it manually.
Yeah, once you're expanding it, that'll be a lot.
Yeah, and then I have tens of thousands of entries for just one system at the moment. Just imagine if there's 2 or 3 systems and you need to keep track of every single shop and every single item in that shop and update them. And so if we get to that point, that will kill an Item Finder unless they release an API. but I don't want them to. Because I want people to play the game, not look at the spreadsheets and websites.
Yeah.
I'd rather we have proper tools in game to do that. Imagine how cool it would be. You open your Mobiglass, you go to like Spectrum in your Mobiglass, you open a Bearing Spectrum website and look at their weapons and see where the weapons are available in which shops in the verse. That would be cool.
What if your version didn't necessarily track how many of an object was available at a place, but rather just if an object is available there?
Yeah, but even if an object is available, I'm not tracking how many are available right now. I'm tracking if an object and for how much.
That's fair. And what if it was community based?
See, with the changes that happened in 3.18.1, I just pushed out an update today to the item finder that lets people report a missing item and report an incorrect data, and that feedback goes into my spreadsheet I prepared for myself, and we as an org, as Cornerstone, will be going through this feedback, and that will even gives us gameplay opportunities to just verify if something's available somewhere that people reported. So that will help for a while, but I still think at some point there will be so much that even that approach would not be feasible, and I think just opening data entry publicly is not a very great idea, because that will lead to people just removing everything from the site because trolls exist.
Yeah, people tend to be kind of dicks.
So you always need to have like a filter for it, and
it really gets me excited, honestly, thinking about this, because I've been wondering. I think it's a really unique topic, a unique situation that Star Citizen has, where there are tools, and I mean Eve does this, right? It's like spreadsheets in space. The whole thing with Eve, there are tools that people make to make the game easier, but with Star Citizen, those tools are built out of the pure necessity that the game is so unfinished. And watching that sort of the tide shift on who is providing that service, I feel like this is a really big moment in that, and it makes me excited for the idea of data running and what data means in the game in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to grab your Herald, for example, and jump between systems to update information for people where what's available, for example, or I don't know, some charting data from the star map.
Do you know what they've said about how the data running? I mean, I've watched some videos and heard a little bit, but I'm wondering if you have any better idea of what they've said about data running, because I know it's still very nebulous. I think the way
I don't remember exactly. I remember some things like the data cannot travel through jump points.
Right.
So you'd need people to do data running to transfer the data through jump points, but I don't remember much.
You can't imagine the game loop is literally just get from one side of a jump point to the other, send out the data, and then jump back through it. Just go back and forth over and over. That wouldn't be very fun.
No, probably there would be more to it.
So I want to go back to the item finder again, and its use. Before all of this, was it a big resource outside of the org? Was this something that people knew Cornerstone for, or was it more a service that was used in Cornerstone? So
before Item Finder existed, there were spreadsheets that people were making just for what's available where. And I looked at those spreadsheets and thought to myself that this is very useful, but there must be a better way to do this than a spreadsheet. So I built can you imagine a spreadsheet for every single item and where it's available?
Oh, man.
So I came up with the item finder, and from the very beginning, since I created the item finder, it was always publicly available. It wasn't something I kept close to the org. We in Cornerstone like to share the data we've discovered and roll with it. So the item finder is open. The item finder is probably the most used thing with it. Even right now, with the state of 3.18 that it's in, item finder gets around 5,000 to 6,000 views a day.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've used it.
It's such a nice feeling starting up the game and seeing people recommend the tool in chat. You don't need to say anything and just see people use and mention your tool.
I mean, it's a very useful service. Clearly you can see from the numbers it's valuable.
Yeah, it's fun, and I hope CIG does something like that in game that is better. But like I said, that's not the only thing Cornerstone does. We have a planetary survey, for example, which you can find at survey.season.com, and we document and describe planets, locations, and stuff like that. And as much as item finder used to be, let's say, based on data mining fully, we tend to avoid data mining with other things we do. So, for example, the planetary survey is fully based on what we found in game and tested and gathered information about and stuff like that. We have our member Just Murphy created and maintains the navigation spreadsheet. You might have seen that one. It's a spreadsheet that lists all the locations in game and how to get to them, and also, which is very unique, or at least it used to be, there are no more tools popping up doing that, but it lets you calculate the sunset and sunrise times at every single location in the verse. So for example, if you're planning on making an operation with your org and you know that you will be at this location, you can check at which time of the day, your real life time, the sunset and sunrise will happen in game at that location.
This can be very useful because I can't begin to describe how many times I've showed up to a place and been like, why is it still nighttime here?
Yeah, if you haven't seen that spreadsheet, I'll link it to you after the podcast.
Sure. And for anybody who's listening who's interested in using the item finder or interested in Cornerstone as an org, of course, as always, it'll be down in the show notes, so check that out.
We have a whole section called knowledge base on our website, which contains articles. We have an article that is describing and documenting the routes and how to get to Aaron Halo. That article in itself has over 300,000 views right now, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we have articles about more sciencey stuff. Like, for example, we have the Aaron Halo density survey. Our member Captain Shepard spent hours upon hours flying through all the parts of the Aaron Halo and discovered that there are 8, I believe.
8
separate 8 bands, and gathered all the information about their density, ran it through like computer algorithms to see which are dense and which are less dense, based on a ton of screenshots he took, described it all in a very scientific manner. That's a fun read if you are interested in that kind of stuff.
And this is exploration gameplay you're describing.
Yeah, we made a project about a river, the first river that showed up on Microtech. We went to the location that the river was supposed to be in, gathered the data, collected pictures of what grows there, pictures of how the area looks, and then when the river showed up there, we went there again, compared it, and wrote and made an article about that. It was pretty fun activity as well. So yeah.
So for these kinds of things, you're running missions as an org, right?
Yes. So when we do exploration operations, it's mostly 2 types of them. One is more of a expedition, driving from point to point, looking at nice views, and the other one is more involved when you to create surveys and articles like that for the knowledge base, and it happens over a span of days or weeks sometimes even, and people just gather around the goal and go at it.
Do you notice what's like the general idea behind, I guess, doing one of these missions? Like, are you going out with the intent of actually figuring something out in game, or is it more just for sandbox sort of, we're having fun, we're trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't?
It's to have fun mostly, but it also lets you discover how things work in game sometimes. Like, a long time ago, there was this Icarus mission that we took part in. That was a journey to the Stanton star that took days just to get to the star, and we managed to get to the surface of the star, discover that the surface is actually not casting any light. You can get through the surface and fly into the sun, and then when you get to the very center of the star, you can see that there's just a single spot, a point light that casts light, and it casts shadows on things close by, so we could do a local sun eclipse, solar eclipse.
Wow. Yeah. So how far away you could like have people that were distant, and you would get in front of that point of light?
Yeah, but it was in a vicinity of, like, close vicinity. You couldn't create an eclipse on a planet, sadly, but that would be amazing. Yeah.
That would be hilarious. You just shut off the light on all of Earth.
Somebody parked a cutlass over the sun.
And it just has to be a cutlass.
Yeah.
So the gameplay that you're doing right now, as we said, is exploration. Like, you're finding things out, you're seeing things that other people just don't get to see. You're making journeys that take actual calculations and patience, for sure.
Yeah.
But what do you think is keeping exploration from becoming an actual paying profession for most people in game? Like, salvage just got hull scraping, which is a definitive way that salvage became an option. But what is that same thing for exploration, in your opinion?
I think big part of earning credits from exploration will be finding the resources and selling their location. And right now, the way things are set up, the minerals just spawn in random places, and they are not persistent enough for you to be able to sell that data. So I think once we get actual, like, resource veins and planets that pop up and you could mine them for days, and a means to transfer and sell data about them, that's when you will be able to start earning credits from doing exploration, I think.
It really does feel like, at least with derelict ships available and some of these new, like, ruins and I guess outposts will always be marked, but there are definitely a lot of things to find in the game. And if there's just a way to let people know where that was for in exchange of UC, then
if there was, would be. I'm hoping very hard that, like, chugging hopium, that the updated star map will have some kind of coordinate system.
I can't imagine they do that without releasing that. I mean, the amount of times they've talked about AR markers with the new star map, and they've talked a little bit about, like, quantum boosting, how you can select the point in the distance and go there. Oh man, if they did all that and then didn't include it, that would be definitely a blow to exploration.
Yeah. If there's a coordinate system that you can actually save coordinates of location and share them, then that will be awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. I would like to go back to talking about the tools a little bit. Besides your item finder, there are other things that kind of work off of data scraping, do you know what other kinds of player-run tools might be affected by this change to the way things are stored?
So the tools that will get affected are the tools that contain information about what's sold and where. So every trading tool might have problems now. I know Aircool shows you information about where you can buy certain ship components and stuff like that. That will probably have to be gone, or that will be gone probably. Things like SC trade tools, they will need to figure out another way of finding the information about what trading routes work and are profitable. That's also a good change, because right now everybody says that trading is broken, but it's broken because everybody goes to a trading calculator, selects the most profitable way, goes there and tries to buy stuff. But the supply of the location is shared between servers, so you could have 50 people trying to buy the most valuable resource and they can't because it's sold out all the time. If a tool for trading doesn't exist, people will need to find those routes themselves, and it will not be as easy as just go to a website and look for the most profitable one. So that might help with trading being broken in quotation marks.
But that also means that people are basically not going to be, because it's like going from being very, very easy to find those routes to very, very difficult, right? So people feel discouraged because now there's just no way of knowing where one might need to go.
But also knowing where the profitable route exists might be valuable information now.
So CIG, we need to be able to send information. That's I think that's the solution I keep coming back to here, is like, this is now the point at which we need to be like, all they need to do is just half-ass it, you know, just give us the ability to send a beacon and say that beacon has like a coordinate on it. I don't know. It's just, we're so close.
We need a way to share information for a price.
Yeah.
But how? And that needs to be tied into reputation then, because nothing stops somebody from sharing incorrect information.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you talk about these game systems and you just keep getting dragged into another one. Like, yes, reputation needs to pick up for that, but in order for that to work, ownership needs to pick up for that. And also security needs to pick up. And it's like, overall.
No wonder the game is taking its time to release, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but when we get there, it will be amazing.
I think so. I think looking at a change...
It's already amazing.
Yeah, and looking at a change like this, it does make me confident to see something small like this, and maybe it's not big enough or it's not connected to something where they feel like they need to make an announcement for it, but something small like this going on in the background that you know is part of the game growing or changing.
Yeah, and some people might say like, oh, 3.18, what's the big deal? But you don't see it on like the outside probably, but when you go in and you actually play the game and you log in and see that there's a ton of ships just floating around PO because people left there, you're like, yes, that's working.
Yeah.
And the more systems working like that will get, the better it will get.
Yeah, I've been loving 3.18 when it does kind of work. It's been...
My experience has been that when 3.18 is working, it's the smoothest patch we had. When it's not, it's breaking horribly.
And even besides being smooth, it just feels like, I mean, there are so many little things in it, from the small inventory changes like shift click to the better FPS because of the optimizations, to the fact that like if you drop something on the ground, you don't have to constantly be afraid that it's going to immediately disappear now. I mean, it's still some glitches here and there, but like if a ship hits the ground or you drop a weapon on the ground or a box falls to the ground, like the game feels more stable because it can track that stuff. And they didn't do that stuff for stability's sake. They did it for persistence sake. But on top of that, it just feels so much more stable and solidified. So.
Yeah, like there are people that still use this coffee cup left in the forest.
Oh God!
and And when you say that to somebody that doesn't know anything about Star Citizen, they're like, why would I want to go find my coffee cup? But when you actually go in game and you experience leaving your ship somewhere and then coming 2 days later to just find your ship still being there, that's amazing.
And right now it's really novel. I mean, obviously for people who play Star Citizen, it's cool. And but like you said, for most people, it doesn't really seem all that impressive because it's just an example of the tech. What's really going to be impressive is when the game designers, the feature designers, and the mission people start to get their hands on this and use it, use it as a way to actually imagine getting a mission because a battle was fought between players and the game just picked up that the battle was over and it needs to be salvaged. Like that kind of stuff will be the point at which it gets incredibly impressive, and we just can't really see that yet.
The interesting thing, I don't know if you've noticed, if you go to PO, there's always now a lot of abandoned ships around.
Yeah.
And the systems in game, the old systems are set in such a way that if there's a bunch of red ships around, it spawns UE Navy. So now if you go to PO, there's almost always a hammerhead from UE Navy hanging around, just flying. Sometimes even an Idris that you can just see flying around PO.
I didn't know that's why they spawned in there.
Yeah, it used to be that if there's a lot of red targets, UE Navy might spawn, and now because the ships just stay there and they are kinda red, and for some reason they are not switching to red, but they are abandoned, which I guess makes them red. Let's say. I think that's triggering the ship spawning. Yeah.
All of it feels a bit hyperbolic when they say like, oh yeah, it's a new game. Like this is a change. This is a shift that makes it a new game. But then like you realize that all of the ways that these systems were made based on the idea that stuff doesn't just hang around all the time. And it is kind of like a new game they now have to build for. Not to scare everybody with the idea that like they're starting over or anything like that, but the abilities that they seem to have to be able to build Star Citizen feels so much more robust with PES.
Yeah, and when you go around in game and notice those little details, it adds so much to the game.
Yeah. So I want to wrap things up here with some discussion about Pyro and 4.0 and kind of where exploration gameplay can go with that. But I wanted to also give you a chance to talk any more about kind of complications or things that you see coming from this change to the way that they're including items in the code, or anything else that you've seen recently.
So like I said, it's gonna definitely get more complicated for keeping the item finder up to date now that the data needs to be sourced from the community. But like I said, I just today pushed out an update, so people who want to help, feel free to go to item finder, and if you see any errors or if you see missing items, submit feedback and it will be verified and acted upon. You can help the whole community by checking those tools or those feedback forms up there. So,
and being somebody who's so involved with this stuff, do you have any early ideas of how you see orgs using things like this sort of data for their own gain? Or because everybody obviously is thinking about setting up a base on a moon or locking down a factory or a supply shipping lane or something for their org. Can you see from what we've gotten already how data might factor into that puzzle for orgs?
Data mining. I hope data mining is gonna be as limited as possible, and we will not be able to get much information from data mining because it basically destroys the gameplay.
Well, I mean from data in the game.
Oh, from in the game. Yeah, gather information about what's available where and keep that to yourself so you know where to get the best weapons and stuff like that. That could be something some people might want to do.
And that would have to be if there aren't people like you doing it on the outside, that would mean that the whatever CIG offers inside of the game would have to be able to keep private databases or something.
It all goes back to data running.
This game could end up being so big.
Yeah, like just recently they talked about Lorville and the interiors of the buildings and stuff like that. It's like Night City in Cyberpunk is huge, but they are almost attempting to build that in Lorville.
Oh man, well, they seemed very very keen to make sure people did not expect something similar to Cyberpunk in that.
But it's still huge compared to like other games. You have, one location that you're stuck to, and Star Citizen has planets and planets and moons and locations filled with stuff. I still remember Chris Roberts saying some long time ago, when it was still 10 for the German times, that he plans on having so much content on each planet that you could spend your whole time playing Star Citizen on just a single planet.
Which is insane, but
yeah,
I do hope that like we go in that direction. I don't, obviously it's insane to think that somebody would spend all of their time on one planet, but I do hope that like a player can go to a new system, land on a planet, maybe not Pyro, but like a player can go from Stanton to Terra and land on Terra Prime and have enough gameplay to be there for like 3 weeks, right? And not feel the need to even go to another planet. Like they make Terra Prime their home base. They maybe occasionally go to the moons. They take some delivery jobs out to space stations, but like they don't end up going out to Terra 3 or Terra 4. They do that maybe when they're 2 or 3 weeks into that system and they've built up some reputation and they know what's going on. I do really hope that like where we are in Star Citizen right now is way away from where the game's going to be.
Yeah.
Because right now you can get in your ship in Lorville, blast off, fly to Microtech, land in New Babbage, and act like it was nothing. But in reality, there should be enough content in this game for that to feel like an actual event, like you're actually making a significant change in the game.
I believe they will slow down the quantum travel significantly. They just need to add systems for something to do while in quantum, and I think they will slow it down significantly.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be a matter of 10 minutes to go from planet to planet. I think it will be way longer than that. I think going from one system to another should be a journey you need to plan for.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think there's a balance they've got to hit of this is a big deal, don't do this all the time, but also, hey, we don't want to annoy you with it. Is when they first brought it in and it was like the times were very long. It would take like 15 minutes to go from Crusader to Hurston. People were like, okay, this is crazy, but like you said, if there's things to do in between, if there's enough content at each planet, you can't really blame Star Citizen for having longer travel times if there's still enough stuff to do in your local area.
I remember the times where you could get kicked from the game for being AFK for too long while in quantum from planet to planet.
Yeah. So this all kind of factors into what exploration is going to be made of in the future. Needing, like, traveling long distances and spending a lot of time in your ship out there doing nothing will have to be peppered in there with little things that you can do while you're waiting, whether it's maintaining your ship or catching up on Spectrum or some other things like that. But like there's going to be a lot of downtime in this game, especially for somebody doing exploration.
It would be interesting to see them add a web browser to Multiclass one day, or to MFTs.
Well, what is
pop up YouTube on your MFT?
Right. What is your, like? Have you put any thought towards what you would want to see able to be done in the meantime? We just got engineering kind of finally shown.
Yeah, engineering is interesting. I think some minigame could be interesting that would speed up the quantum travel. Maybe they could do something where you, for example, have to plan out a quantum jump on your star map so that it's more reliable or faster, or you don't encounter any stops on the way. And if you just forget about it and jump, you might get stopped by some wreckage in space and stuff. And
they could,
but it should. Yeah, but it shouldn't be something that keeps you stuck to your pilot seat either. You should be able to move around your ship when in quantum. So.
Right. And they also need to make sure, if we're going to say doing this improves your quantum travel, they also need to make sure they don't force people to do it. It's like with engineering and maintaining your components, it's there so that people can do it, but they do need to be careful not to make everyone have to.
Yeah, they said it would, like, breakages from engineering won't be something that happens all the time.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's
so much good stuff.
It's going to be interesting how they managed to do it. I do remember them talking about how you'd have to look at the signatures of the things that you're scanning and recognize what they were, which
you can do that kind of a bit right now. You can scan when you look for salvage or mining stuff. You can ping, and based on the signature, you can recognize if it's salvage or mineable.
Right. Yeah. Somebody mentioned that the salvageable materials had a higher signature, I think, or something.
I think they are multiples of 2000 or something like that.
Yeah. So it would be awesome to be able to get like a visual sort of blurry, clouded effect of something, and if you're good enough, you can recognize what that might be. And
somebody on your crew on your ship is great at reading the scanner, and you know where to go.
Yeah,
and have advantage over somebody else. Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to in Pyro? I guess it doesn't have to be exploration related, but just in general, the expansions that they're talking about with Pyro, and even just their quote unquote road to 4.x, I'm going to call it, not 4.0.
I'm looking forward to the engineering gameplay that comes with 4.0, because I think that will be very interesting. But just Pyro itself, what we saw was beautiful, and I want to see more of that myself. Amazing views, explore the stations that look pretty cool, those planets look amazing.
This seems like the single biggest moment in the entirety of Star Citizen's history so far that they have to actually provide players with a true exploration experience. They don't they don't get the chance to drop new territory into the game often, and with this update, it's going to be like 7.
If they drop the whole system at, like, they never drop the whole system at once. We always get small trickling of new locations and stuff.
Right.
And if we get the whole system at once, it will be, everything you see will be new, which is exciting.
So do you think they'll take that, they'll make use of that and take that step further we've been talking about, of possibly allowing data transfer or just some kind of big step forward?
I would love that. That might be. Look, we're supposed to get server meshing with 4.0, so maybe that thing relies on server meshing and will be in by that time.
At the very least, I'd hope we'd get the new star map.
Yeah, we need to.
And what do you think of Quantum Boost? It's the last part I want to ask about.
Oh, I'm excited about this change. I think it will be a cool new mechanic. I don't have a problem with it.
Kind of a new. I know. The bummer is that they introduced Quantum Boost with Master Modes, and Master Modes is like, there's so much more being introduced with Master Modes that you kind of can miss Quantum Boost as being part of the change.
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant change to
Master Modes
fundamental
are
travel.
Interesting. Yeah, Master Modes are interesting just as much as the Quantum Boost. The Quantum Boost will be very helpful for just going straight line and finding something new.
Yeah.
Like,
if it was like an actual exploration-based travel.
Yeah, and like currently in game, I discourage everybody from spending a lot of time on Hearthstone, because if you want to do missions around Hearthstone, there's a bunch of markers, quantum markers that are just missing on Hearthstone, and you need to like fly 500 kilometers manually or something.
Yeah.
With quantum boost, that wouldn't be a problem. You could just fly there quickly.
Do you think they'll still do all the spline jumps around the planets once we have quantum boost, since that's kind of, you can steer it a little bit?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe not.
Seems like they introduced it. They introduced so much stuff at CitizenCon last year and then went kind of quiet on it. And I'm like, I need to know more, folks.
Give us more. It feels like it would be redundant to have the spline jumps and quantum boost, but we'll see.
Right. All right, Meep. Well, I'd like to thank you again for joining this show. Honestly, this is one of those small changes that I think is going to come up a lot more. I'm hoping just in the next update or 2 updates from now, and we can look back at this change and be like, oh, look at the big things they were preparing for. Or this could be something that they, go back on in 3.18.2, right?
They haven't. 3.18.2 still has that. So
yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're good. We're good up until there.
We'll see how it goes further. Yeah.
Well, I do hope this is a change that sticks around, because it sounds like it's going to be pretty significant and make a big difference in the game.
The more I think about it, the more excited I get. So cool.
It's an exciting one. Before we sign off here, I'd like to give you one last chance just to let people know kind of what it is you do. You're here because of Cornerstone. Go ahead and give them your pitch on Cornerstone. If anybody would like to join an org like yours, let them know who you're looking for.
Okay, so Cornerstone is an exploration org mainly, but like I said, we have pillars for every single gameplay loop in-game, and we aim to be a self-sustaining entity in the future. I'd like to think, kinda unique when it comes to structure of the org. We are not at all militaristic, let's say. There is no strict structure. We have some structure, because without any it will be hell, but we like to think of all of our members as members who can be captains of their own ship and decide what they want their ship to be like and do whatever they want on their ship. And as long as it's within our code of conduct, of course, they can be their own captains. And yeah, if you would like to find us and find out more about Cornerstone, visit the seastone.space website or join us directly on our Discord server at discord.gg/seastone. And that's where you can find us.
Do you guys take part in like the dynamic events as an org?
Yeah, we do. We'll definitely take part in Xenothreat when it happens, and in Jumpdown when that happens as well.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining. Folks, that information will be down in the show notes below. As for myself, you already know we've got an org if you'd like to jump in, but regardless of that, we will have a couple more episodes on this sort of new format for anybody who is coming to these live, supporters who are watching this live. Thank you so much for being there. And if you are looking to come and watch these over the next, I think just a week, actually, the timing will be a little bit off. We are busy with our travels right now, but we'll be back to the normal schedule soon. Everything else is going as normal. Citizen Central is up on audio platforms. If you haven't seen the other podcast, it's coming out monthly and is generally a group discussion. And if you are checking this one out as your first, make sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel. Check us out on the audio platforms, which are ad-free. And hopefully I will see you in next week's episode. So thanks again, Meep, for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was a very fun podcast, and I hope people listening will enjoy it as much as I did.
I think so. This has been a good topic. Thanks again for coming, and thank you everyone for listening. I'll see you all next week.